Today, we'll be flying over 10,000 miles in Air France as we travel from New York to Athens in economy before returning home to the US in Air France business class. This is cozy, don't you think? Along the way, we'll compare these two very different experiences to help you decide if upgrading to business class is worth the extra points, and of course I'll share with you how we booked this $7,000 experience entirely using points, and a few other helpful tips when it comes to booking Air France award seats, including how I got a free 3-day trip here to Paris. Huge thank you to Point Me for sponsoring this week's adventure. So as I'm recording this, we're actually in the middle of our 3-day stopover here in Paris on our way to Athens. More on the stopover in a second as well, but let's start with our economy flight that brought us here, including how we booked it using points. So for the sake of fairness in today's video, we won't be visiting the Air France and KLM lounge that's here at JFK because we are flying in economy, so we'll save that for when we're flying business class on the way home. But thanks to our American Express Platinum card, despite the fact that we are flying in economy, we still get to visit the Centurion Lounge here at JFK. So sort of just your friendly reminder that just because you're flying economy doesn't mean that you can't have a luxurious travel experience if you have the right credit card in your wallet. And yes, obviously this card is almost $700 per year, but I've been to 3 Centurion Lounges in the past week alone. All right, we enjoyed our time at the Centurion Lounge. Always nice to relax before a flight, but it is time for Air France economy. It feels different walking through business class when you're nearly gonna fly it on the way home. But for today, all the way to the back. So today we're flying on one of Air France's older 777s, which I'm actually fine with because I would much rather have their new product on the A350 when flying in business class, which you'll see on the way home. But as usual with these comparisons, I'd call the economy experience perfectly adequate. We got a blanket, some headphones, and a wet towel, which admittedly was a nice touch for economy. But the food was honestly the worst part of this experience, and thankfully it did taste much better than it appears. Looks like Aaron is giving it a skeptical thumbs up at best. Since this was a red-eye flight, we were served dinner and then a light breakfast before landing. But yeah, that was pretty much it. I put on the greatest movie known to man, and after a few hours of sleep, we were landing in Paris. Now, like I said, we did enjoy the Olympics for a few days using a free stopover, which I'm gonna explain later, but from there it was a shorter flight over to Athens, and that was a wrap on our Air France economy experience. We'll see you soon, business class. Well, that concludes 10 hours in Air France economy. Definitely glad to be off of that plane, and very grateful that we split it up into 2 sections with our stopover in Paris. Over the next few weeks, we're gonna be exploring some different parts of Greece and taking a Virgin Voyages cruise, all of which was booked using miles and points, so be sure to subscribe to see those videos when they come out. But I'll catch up with you in a few weeks back here at the Athens airport for our Air France business class flight home, which I am so excited about. All right, let's do some math because that's what people do when vacationing in Paris.
Why can't I be normal? Yes, me too.
So if paid in cash, our flight from JFK to Paris would have been $469, and then the second leg that we're about to take tomorrow from Paris to Athens would have been $373, bringing the total for this whole itinerary to $842. If we subtract the taxes and fees of $100 and divide that number by the 22,000 points that we spent per ticket, that gives us a redemption value of 3.37 cents per point, which for an economy seat is actually pretty decent. Now, if you were paying really close attention, then you may be wondering, why is there a 3-day gap between these 2 flights? And that's where that whole stopover thing that I mentioned earlier comes into play. Now, we have made an entire video breaking down everything you need to know about stopovers and how to use them to your benefit, so I'll link to that down in the description if you want to learn more. But essentially, a stopover is an intentionally long layover that can basically serve as a mini free vacation. For example, we opted for a 3-day stopover here in Paris during the Olympics on our way to Athens, and sure, you could just fly straight to your final destination, and that's what I typically do myself, but using this stopover strategy, you can create some mini vacations within your vacation, and in the case of the Flying Blue Rewards program, which is what both Air France and KLM use, stopovers are free. That may not sound like that big of a deal, but most other programs will at least charge a few thousand points for booking a stopover, so the fact that Flying Blue offers stopovers of up to 1 year for free, not only on Air France and KLM flights, but all of their partner airline flights as well, well is an incredibly unique benefit that I highly recommend you take advantage of. Aaron and I have made some incredible memories in the short time that we've been here in Paris. We get to watch the Olympic opening ceremony in just a few hours, and the only cost to us was our accommodations for those 3 nights, which, as you may have guessed, was also booked using points. Anyway, check out that full video on stopovers if you want to learn more, but the Flying Blue stopover benefit is fantastic, so I did want to mention that here. Okay, so 22,000 points and $100 in fees isn't bad for 5,000 miles of travel from New York to Athens, especially considering we also get that free 3-day vacation here in Paris using that stopover method. But now I want to send you over to future Brendan to see what that business class flight was like on the way home, and then we'll come back here to break down all of the numbers on that and help you decide if it's worth the extra points. The Athens airport is absolute madness this time of year, but I can't even be mad about it because I woke up like a kid on Christmas this morning because we are finally ready to board our Air France flight in business class. So the plan is to first board an A320 to fly from here in Athens over to Paris. We'll then sprint through the Paris airport to hopefully make our very short 1-hour connection, and then we'll fly on an A350-900 from Paris over to Boston. And to add a little bit more complexity to the whole short connection thing, I have the dreaded quadruple S on my boarding pass, but we'll deal with that when it becomes an issue. I do highly recommend, though, that if you're going to splurge on business class, first of all, don't book such short connection, because sadly, no Air France business class lounge for us today. But I'd also recommend that you book your business class flight on your way home, because despite the fact that I had an absolutely incredible time on this trip, I'm not even sad about it being over, because I know that we're about to go enjoy such an incredible flight. So the benefits of flying business class began as soon as we arrived at the Athens airport, since we were not only able to use Sky Priority check-in, but also Fastlane, which is similar to Clear or Pre-check and allowed us to fly through security. Like I said, the first leg of our journey was on an A320, so business class really just means economy with the center seat empty, but that was perfect for my camera, and while this is nothing compared to what you're gonna see next, they still served us a full meal, gave us plenty of snacks, and our flight attendant knew that we had a really short connection and gave us super detailed instructions on exactly where we needed to run through the airport in order to make our connection. And we needed all of the help we could get because to make things worse, we landed late and I still had to deal with that extra security check on my boarding pass. So by the time we landed, I was starting to think that Aaron might be flying home in business class without me. Thank you. Let the race begin. A few weeks of eating gyros and cheese and I'm already out of shape.
Did we miss the flight? No, you just made it.
Yeah! Bon voyage, Mr. Paul.
Thank you. Only by some miracle, we made it. A proper hot towel is exactly what I needed after running through the airport, and champagne quickly followed. The flight attendants were very excited to show us how we could connect our phones and AirPods to the entertainment system so that we didn't have to use the onboard headphones, which I'm personally a huge fan of. And shortly after takeoff, dinner service began, which, unlike our economy flight, was arguably the best part of this experience. They started with a bunch of appetizers, followed by our entree and some kind of mango bar for dessert, and if it's not already obvious, I am by no means a picky eater, but everything that we were served was absolutely delicious, and I don't think I've ever been on a flight that had a menu made specifically for the route that we were flying. Not exactly sure what that means, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. So the food was great, but how was the seat? This seat is gigantic. Plenty of storage, plenty of leg room, really no complaints so far. Erin gave the tea a triple point, which appears to be a positive review, and she seems to be a pretty big fan of this entire experience.
This is insane.
About an hour or two before landing, they served a breakfast/second dessert kind of meal, which, no surprise, was also incredible, but sadly, it was already time to land in Boston, so the big question is, was it worth the upgrade? At least accounting for the few hours that we've been in business class so far, I would say it is definitely worth the extra money and the points if you can stomach the extra fees. And again, if this isn't your norm, then you really will appreciate it so much because it is such a special experience. And yes, I do bring my own light on airplanes just for you guys. What are you gonna do about it? So hopefully whatever business class experience you and I just had was pretty nice. I'm not sure right now, but what I am sure about is that I booked those $5,000 tickets using points. So let me show you how I pulled that off with another installment of Math in Paris. That was stupid.
That was really stupid.
So our flight home from Athens to Boston does have a short layover here in Paris, but remember that a layover and a stopover are not the same thing. So we're gonna make this as simple as possible and view it as one continuous booking. For starters, our exact business class flight from Athens to Boston would have cost $5,307 for 2 people, or about $2,653 per person. But you know me, and I am not gonna spend $5 grand on a one-way flight. So I instead booked this using, wait for it, 43,800 points each. As far as transatlantic business class flights go, that's pretty dang good, but as always, there is that one minor detail that we still have to discuss, and that would of course be the weird family member that just won't leave us alone, taxes and fees. Uncle Sam has to get his cut. I guess they don't call it Uncle Sam in France. Now, if you're wondering how I'm able to find the needle in a haystack with these award bookings without wasting hours of my life endlessly searching for the best redemption, then real quick, I want to tell you about today's video sponsor, PointMe, which is the tool that I actually use to find the flights in this video in a matter of minutes instead of wasting hours of my life. If you're not familiar, PointMe is an award search tool that allows you to quickly and easily find award bookings without you having to open 1,000 tabs in your computer and sift through countless loyalty programs. All you do is type in your desired departure and arrival airports, the dates you're looking to fly, which class you're looking to fly, just like you would on most booking sites, and PointMe does all the work for you, searching well over 100 airlines across 33 different loyalty programs to help you find that needle in a haystack without you having to waste hours searching through all of those options on your own. For example, if you wanted to book this once-in-a-lifetime first-class flight from San Francisco to Tokyo, booking it directly through a travel portal would cost over 1.4 million points. But if I search for that exact same flight through PointMe, it tells me that I can book it instead through American Airlines for just 80,000 points. Now, obviously, that is an extreme example in terms of point savings, but I cannot emphasize enough the benefit of time saving here. And I personally use this tool to find the Air France flights that we took in this video. PointMe has single-handedly added days back to my life, so if you want to save yourself a ton of time and hard-earned points on your next award booking, then check out the first link down in the description to get 20% off of a standard annual plan. Thanks so much to PointMe for sponsoring this week's adventure. Now back to the video. So originally, our business class flight was showing as 50,000 points each, but the nice thing about booking through Air France is they frequently will give you an option to pay with fewer points, but more taxes and fees, or more points and less taxes and fees. And in my experience, opting to pay higher taxes and fees and fewer points almost always gives you a better redemption value. Not that that's what it's always about, I want to make that very clear, and no matter what, in this case, you're looking at hundreds of dollars in taxes and fees, which is certainly not insignificant. The other sneaky thing about them giving you a choice is you aren't presented with this until after you've already transferred points into your Flying Blue account. I'm like 99% sure that you can't even get to this screen unless you already have the full amount of points in your account, so if you do opt for the fewer points and higher fees option, which is what I went for, then yes, you will usually maximize the value of your points, but do keep in mind that the points that you're saving are still going to be trapped in your Air France account. Not that big of a deal, especially if you're like me and you frequently use Flying Blue, but something you do want to keep in mind. Okay, so I opted for the higher taxes and fees and fewer points option, and remember, this is for 2 people, but if we have everything, this ticket would have been $2,653 if paid in cash. We paid $399 in fees per person and redeemed 43,800 points per ticket, giving us a redemption value of 5.1 cents per point. I'm of course sensitive to the fact that the fees alone for our 2 tickets could have purchased one of the economy seats in cash, which is exactly why we've only flown business class a handful of times in our lives. But that also makes this a really special experience when you do have the opportunity, and it helps us stretch our miles and points a little bit further. One last thing worth mentioning is that Flying Blue frequently runs what they call Flying Blue promos, which we've also made a full video on, but also transfer bonuses of 25% or more across many of the banks that transfer to Flying Blue. And while we weren't able to leverage that benefit in this particular case, that is another fantastic way to maximize the value of your points. Now, I know this is a bit controversial, but I'm personally a big fan of speculatively transferring points, specifically to programs that you know you will frequently use, which in my case, Flying Blue would be one of those. Again, I wasn't able to leverage a transfer bonus in this case, but using those transfer bonuses literally lets you multiply your points by clicking a button on your computer, so definitely worth looking into. Okay, but now for the final comparison of these two experiences so that we can finally decide if business class on Air France is worth the extra 21,800 points and $300 in extra fees.
So this probably won't come as much of a surprise, but if you ask me, it is definitely worth the upgrade to Air France business class over economy, especially on longer flights. Don't get me wrong, the economy experience was fine, but I was honestly shocked by the significant difference in the quality of the food, and while we were on two different aircraft in this case, the difference between the economy and business class seats with Air France was significantly greater than other comparisons that we've done in the past. Again, it all depends on your travel budget and the things that you prioritize, but 22,000 extra points and a couple $100 in additional fees is, at least in my opinion, a small price to pay for such a huge difference in the quality of the experience across the board.
So having done many of these versus style videos at this point for both hotels and flights, I'm gonna guess that the future version of me probably just told you that it is well worth the upgrade if you can stomach the extra taxes and fees. That's at least been my experience in the past, and again, this isn't about flying business class all the time, but it's about making it a really special experience that you will cherish every single minute of. But let me know what you think of this comparison down in the comment section, and whether or not you think it's worth the upgrade for an extra 22,000 points and $300 in extra fees. Again, be sure to check out the first link down in the description below to get 20% off of a standard annual plan with PointMe and save yourself countless hours and hard-earned points on your next award search. And I'll also leave a link to our top travel credit cards page if you want to snag the latest welcome offers and start working towards your next adventure. The opening ceremony for the Olympics starts in just a few hours, so I'm gonna go stake out a spot along the Seine. But as always, thank you so much for watching and allowing Aaron and I to have incredible experiences like this. It really does mean the world to us. But, nuit et and we'll see you next week.